Hello, and welcome to Just Therapist Things, where we talk all things therapy. My name is Jordan, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist from California. I am a private practice owner of Vital Mind Therapy, where I see clients virtually and in person. I also lead support groups for a nonprofit cancer support organization. Thanks for listening. Disclaimer, this podcast episode is just for entertainment purposes, not meant to be used to diagnose and treat real people. Overdiagnosing is a big issue, so I'm only analyzing and diagnosing based on how the character presents on television or in a movie, and if it warrants a diagnosis, in my professional opinion. Hello. Thank you for being here today. This is my 5th episode in my series of Diagnosing, where I, a licensed marriage and family therapist, analyze and, if necessary, diagnose fictional characters from TV and movies. Trigger warning: in this episode specifically, I discuss sensitive topics such as suicide, abuse, murder, and violence. So I've been really excited to do this episode because the Joker is a wild, exciting character, but also because there's a new movie coming out on October 4th with, of course, Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker and Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn. I cannot wait to see Lady Gaga in this type of movie. She is the queen, and she's going to be absolutely incredible. So that's October 4th. That's coming out in theaters. The character the Joker was created by Bill Finger, Bob Kane, and Jerry Robinson, and first appeared as the arch nemesis of Batman in 1940 and a supervillain in the DC Comics. Over the past 80 years, the Joker has been portrayed in television, movies, and books, most notably in the Batman TV series, in Heath Ledger's Dark Knight, Jared Leto's Suicide Squad, and, of course, Joaquin Phoenix's recent Joker movies. The Joker is famous looks-wise for his horrible mouth disfigurement and also his white skin, green hair, and bright red mouth. And his mouth is upturned in a smile at all times because of his mouth disfigurement, which are scars, and I will get into why he has those scars a little bit later. Unlike many villains, the Joker does not have a definitive origin story, but there are ones that have been developed. In the comics and first depictions of the Joker, the hypothesized origin story was that his startling looks came from falling into a vat of chemical waste that bleached his skin white, turned his hair green, and turned his lips bright red. And subsequently, the chemical toxicity caused him to go insane. In recent movies, there's a different story of a failed comedian named Arthur Fleck who was abused and abandoned as a child by his biological parents and brought up in the foster system where he was also abused. So the white face, red lips, and green hair come from Arthur's comedic routine, and they're also most likely to cover up his mouth disfigurement that was a result of the abuse he endured. There is a really heart-pounding, intense scene in Heath Ledger's Dark Knight where the Joker is holding a knife to a guy's throat and telling a story of abuse by his father. Here is a clip of that. Definitely trigger warning, and this is also the only clip that I'm going to play in this episode, just because it's, the Joker is kind of disturbing. The Joker is kind of a lot, and having clips of really intense moments, I don't think you really need to hear that too much. But here's the one that I have for today, and of course, if you want to watch more, YouTube, and also watch the movies. So here's the clip.
And one night, he goes off crazier than usual. Mommy gets the kitchen knife to defend herself. He doesn't like that. Not one bit. So, me watching, he takes the knife to her, laughing while he does it. He turns to me and he says, "Why so serious?" He comes at me with the knife. "Why so serious?" Sticks the blade in my mouth. Let's put a smile on that face. Why so serious?
If you can't tell by the intensity of this clip and the weird sounds in the background, while the Joker is saying this, he is actually holding a knife to a guy's throat and mouth and kind of threatening to do the same thing. So, really creepy, really intense, and also really sad that he endured so much abuse. The Joker actually also says in this same movie that he got scars from a situation with his former wife. So who knows what really happened, but whatever happened, it's definitely messed up. So the Joker had a tough childhood and turned into a troubled teen and troubled adult. Another way that the Joker stands out as different from other supervillains is that he doesn't have any superhuman abilities, but he instead creates his lethal concoctions and weapons. The Joker initially appeared as a serial killer who hated Batman with a passion, was just after destruction, and killed victims with Joker venom. He has continuously been portrayed as a sadistic villain, but in recent movies, he now uses real life weapons such as guns and bombs. And we also see a sad, troubled, failed comedian side of him. So he's kind of goofy, kind of silly, but underneath all that goofiness and silliness is just a really sad man. So, pretty much starting with Heath Ledger and continuing through the recent Joaquin Phoenix movies, people have started to have a lot of empathy for the Joker, as I said, in that he is just a very lonely, sad, disturbed man who is trying to get back at the world because of the horrible way that the world treated him. His lack of empathy, sadistic tendencies, and disregard for laws and societal norms is, of course, not cool, not appropriate. But in the past few movies, we do start to see the humanity behind the Joker and what made him who he is. It's honestly, the movies are really a beautiful, disturbing portrayal of what generational abuse and childhood trauma can do to a person. And I say beautiful in the way that the film was created. It was just really, really well done, but it is very disturbing. So that's kind of all you really need to know about the Joker. Just really messed up guy, but also has a lot of history, a lot to unpack there. And what's his diagnosis? Here are some rule outs first. A lot of people online have made unsubstantiated statements that the Joker is psycho. And I have an issue with the term psycho, and I've definitely been guilty of using it. But people really say the word psycho freely, and they don't understand that psycho refers to psychopathy, not psychosis. So people online have been saying that the Joker is psychotic, but psychotic disorder is very different than psychopathy. And so psychotic disorders and schizophrenia are very intertwined. Schizophrenia is actually a type of psychotic disorder. And sure, to the untrained eye, then I'm sure this seems like a potential diagnosis just to kind of place on the Joker. But that's also a representation of how people misinterpret what schizophrenia and what psychosis actually are. So, people with psychotic disorder and schizophrenia do not have a disregard for human life, and they are not typically violent. A quote from the Journal of Psychiatry says, "Most people with schizophrenia are not any more dangerous or violent than people in the general population and may in fact be more vulnerable to being victims of crimes. While limited mental health resources in the community may lead to homelessness and frequent hospitalizations, it is a misconception that people with schizophrenia end up homeless or living in hospitals. Most people with schizophrenia live with their family in group homes or on their own." So, hopping off my soapbox about schizophrenia and psychotic disorders, but they are disorders that are very much misinterpreted. And the Joker does not have either of these disorders. And here's why. So, psychosis is basically just a detachment from reality. And sure, the Joker has a detachment from reality because he, of course, thinks it's okay to kill people and destroy society, but he really does not have the diagnosable presentation of schizophrenia or psychotic disorders. All people with schizophrenia or psychotic disorder have some form of hallucinations or audio or visual delusions, and the Joker does not have any of this. Some signs of schizophrenia that the Joker does present are disorganized speech, diminished emotional expression, and bizarre behavior or movements. But since he does not have the typical markers of these disorders with the typical hallucinations and delusions, then we can definitely rule it out because there is another diagnosis that is much more fitting. Another diagnosis for the Joker that is all over the internet is dissociative identity disorder, or DID. And this is a mental health condition where you have two or more separate personalities that control your mood and behavior at different times. So it used to be called multi-personality disorder, or something like that, but now it is dissociative identity disorder. A really great and creepy depiction of this is in the movie Split. So I recommend looking that up. And of course, that's very exaggerated because there's violence and murder and things in that, which most people with dissociative identity disorder do not exhibit. But Split is a really good movie nonetheless. So DID is actually a coping mechanism for a brain that has experienced trauma. Very, very common that people with this disorder, they have had some form of big trauma in their life. And memory loss actually happens between each personality. So I'm not going to go into this disorder too much because the Joker doesn't have multiple personalities. He's very much himself at all times. Himself is just really complicated and messed up. But yeah, he doesn't have multiple personalities. This disorder is very fascinating, though, and also very rare. One last rule out, which I've seen that sure, okay, could be maybe a subdiagnosis for the Joker, but it's definitely not encompassing his entire behavior or mental disorder, is people are saying that the Joker has bipolar disorder. So, to recap, bipolar 1 disorder is characterized by episodes of mania with possibly depressive episodes as well, while bipolar 2 disorder is hypomania, so less intense mania, with definitely having depressive episodes as well. Mania is described as periods of great excitement, euphoria, overactivity, and delusions. And depression is a low mood and loss of interest or pleasure in activities. So, yes, the Joker definitely has mood swings that can be attributed to mania and depression. And I definitely think there's a little depression in there, which I'll get into. But his extremes definitely warrant a different diagnosis. Bipolar disorder can be extreme for sure, but the periods of mania usually do not lead to violence, lack of empathy, and disregard for others. So, yes, with the Joker, definitely has mood swings, but bipolar disorder does not, in my opinion, really even begin to touch what the Joker is dealing with. So, my diagnosis, drum roll please, for the Joker is antisocial personality disorder with also narcissism and depressive tendencies. So, another term for antisocial personality disorder is psychopathy. And ASPD is categorized as a pervasive pattern of disregard and violation for the rights of others. So, to have a diagnosis of ASPD, you have to meet the criteria for a certain number of these different points that I'm going to say. And the Joker pretty much meets all of them. So, this really is the diagnosis that he fits definitively. So the first of these criteria is the failure to conform to social norms with respect to the law. So this is a yes for the Joker because he is constantly getting arrested or in trouble with law enforcement. Another criteria is deceitfulness or for personal profit or pleasure. Another yes for the Joker, who's known to lie, use aliases, etc. for his personal profit, or he just kills people for his benefit. Another is irritability and aggressiveness, namely physical fights or assaults. Yes, again, the Joker is constantly fighting, torturing, murdering everyone and anyone in Gotham City. Gotham City is definitely not the place to be when the Joker is around, but it makes for a really good storyline. Also, there is reckless disregard for safety of others. Yes, again, because Joker literally kills people. He also kills or harms innocent civilians just because they're kind of in the way or for his own benefit, and that is always not pleasant to see in these movies. So, more criteria for antisocial personality disorder that the Joker does meet are impulsivity, being at least 18 years of age. Yes, I think he's in his 40s maybe when these situations occur. And also, there must be criteria met for conduct disorder before the age of 15. So for this, it isn't exactly known if the criteria is definitely met for this because we don't know much about the Joker's childhood and teenagehood. It would be awesome if they made a movie about the Joker's life, but also that would be probably very sad and very disturbing and kind of traumatizing because it sounds like he did go through a lot of trauma in his life. But it is safe to assume that because of his current presentation and because of his history of trauma and abuse, he most likely had conduct disorder. And of course, another criteria that the Joker definitely does have is lack of remorse. He shows empathy for his victims, which is a pretty clear indicator of psychopathy or antisocial personality disorder. Other possible or diagnoses with his ASPD diagnosis are narcissism and also depression. So I'm thinking narcissism because the Joker definitely craves attention. He laughs hysterically and very loudly. He has kind of wild outfits. And also with his face coloring and his hair color and his lip color and all of that, he definitely draws attention to himself. He's also always standing on cars and things and speaking loudly, kind of like yelling to people in the city and drawing a lot of attention to himself. And of course, setting things on fire, throwing bombs, shooting people, all of that, which definitely, of course, draws attention to himself as well. He also really takes advantage of others. He thinks he deserves special privileges. He's preoccupied with his fantasies of power, and he has an unwillingness to see the needs of others. These are all signs of narcissism. With depression, this is also a possible co-diagnosis or subdiagnosis because the Joker does have multiple suicide attempts throughout the movies and throughout the story, and he has a big lack of social support, lack of interest in normal activities, and he also clearly feels very negatively about himself, which we see a lot in the Heath Ledger, Joaquin Phoenix movies. Another super interesting diagnosis that I came across in my research is actually for a neurological condition called pseudobulbar affect. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Pseudobulbar affect is a disorder of the regulation of emotional expression due to a neurological disease. In the Joker's case, it is assumed that this neurological condition came from a traumatic brain injury that he endured during the abuse in his childhood. A traumatic brain injury in itself predisposes a person to substance use, mood disorders, and personality disorders. Pseudobulbar affect, please someone let me know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, is characterized by episodes of sudden, inappropriate, and uncontrollable laughing or crying. So this definitely sounds like the Joker. That's why partly why he's called the Joker is because he just laughs and cries and has big expressions in inappropriate and kind of creepy circumstances. So with this disorder, a person feels the emotions normally, but shows them in an exaggerated way. So yeah, definitely Joker, definitely could have this neurological condition. And this condition can sometimes be managed by medication. So that's a good sign for the Joker. So besides maybe managing this pseudobulbar affect through medication, how can we treat the Joker? Well, ASPD and narcissism as well are very difficult to treat considering the fact that individuals who have these disorders do not believe that they are in need of treatment. And if a patient is taken into treatment, there is usually a huge lack of improvement as the patient is uncooperative and doesn't think they need to be there. I definitely think that, well, first, the Joker probably needs to, if he was actually going to get treatment, he would need to be arrested for his crimes and put in a mental health program through the Department of Corrections. And unfortunately, it really depends from, I don't know, what I've seen and researched and seen on documentaries and things. It really depends on the state and county and how the prison system mental health programs really are. But ideally, he would be in a mental health program through prison, serving a life sentence for his crimes while also receiving mental health treatment, such as psychotherapy and medication. The Joker definitely needs some behavior modification treatment since all of his current hobbies involve hurting others. Psychotherapy could help with his depressive tendencies, building self esteem, and finding healthier ways of emotional expression. So, psychotherapy and behavior modification. But there's no psychotherapy treatment really that is tailored to antisocial personality disorder. It's kind of just building up these other life supports, whether that's like support from yourself or support with others, finding different ways of coping. But yeah, so that's kind of all we can do with psychotherapy for him. And there's no medication as well for antisocial personality disorder or narcissism. It would be great if there was. But an antidepressant may help his depression and irritability and negative self image, and a stimulant could potentially help his impulsivity. So that's kind of all we could do in the form of medication and psychotherapy, unfortunately. Um, but yeah, and trauma processing, of course, with that psychotherapy, definitely processing all the trauma that he went through. Maybe some EMDR could be good for him, hypnotherapy, things like that. So that's the Joker for you. If you haven't seen any of the Joker movies, watch at your own discretion. They are intense and disturbing, but really fascinating, especially for someone who is interested in psychology. The most recent movies are so interesting because you find yourself, as I said, having empathy for the Joker and feeling sad for him, but also he's this sadistic serial killer. So it's kind of a psychological thing for the viewers as well to go through. But the movies are incredibly well made and so well done. And I will definitely be watching the new one coming out in a few weeks. So plug for that one. Go support Lady Gaga and Joaquin Phoenix. And let me know what you think of this analysis of the Joker. Thanks for listening.
If anyone listening is struggling with their mental health, please call 988 or 911 to get help, reach out to loved ones, and know that you are not alone. Thank you for listening to Just Therapist Things, and I will talk to you soon.